There was a time when a girl growing up could love a sport, master its skills, but also have absolutely no pathway in the game beyond school or amateur competitions. Stadiums were built for men, newspapers treated women's results as nothing more than a novelty, and many governing bodies insisted that serious competition was somehow unsuitable for women. Talent and audience were there, but opportunity and investment were nowhere to be found. In this season finale for More Than Just a Score, we look at the rising number of women finding their places in the games that we love. The rise of women's professional sports isn't just the story of games becoming popular with the half of the population that those games have traditionally ignored. It's a story about athletes forcing institutions to recognize what had always been present. It's about women competing when there was little money, limited equipment, and almost no television coverage. It's about laws that opened up gymnasiums and scholarships, organizers who built leagues from nothing, and stars who proved that fans would fill arenas when the product was promoted properly. By the 2020s, women's sports had entered a new commercial era. Soccer clubs selling out major stadiums. Women's basketball is setting television and attendance records. Professional hockey finally created a unified league with elite players and strong ownership. Women are also coaching, officiating, managing, and broadcasting inside leagues that were exclusively the male domain. The change came through generations of resistance, persistence, and reinvention. Women have competed for as long as organized sport has existed, even when they were pushed to the margins. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, women played baseball, basketball, golf, tennis, and hockey, often under rules designed to conform to ideas of femininity. They formed their own industrial teams, traveling clubs, and local leagues because established institutions rarely offered them a place. Openings appeared only during periods of social disruption. During the Second World War, the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League was created in 1943 as major league owners worried that the men's game would be weakened by military service. The league became a pretty serious attraction and produced celebrated players such as Dorothy Kamenchek and Sophie Kouris. But when the men returned, the entertainment economy shifted and the women's league faded. The AAGPBL did prove something, though. Women could draw crowds and play at a high level. Women also built up acclaim in individual sports. Golfers such as Babe Didrikson Zaharias helped establish the Ladies Professional Golf Association, or the LPGA, in 1950. Tennis became another critical proving ground because individual stars could attract spectators without having to wait for a league to be created. The problem, though, still remained that prize money, scheduling, and publicity overwhelmingly favored men. That imbalance produced one of the most important figures in modern sports history, Billie Jean King. King was a champion on the tennis court, winning 39 Grand Slam titles across singles, doubles, and mixed doubles. Her greater contribution, however, was understanding that athletic excellence alone wouldn't change the system. Women needed bargaining power, independent organization, and the ability to control their own commercial future. In 1970, King was among the original 9, which was a group of players who signed symbolic $1 contracts to compete on a new women's tennis circuit after challenging unequal prize money and limited opportunities. In 1973, she helped establish the Women's Tennis Association and became the WTA's first president. That same year, her advocacy helped make the U.S. Open the first major tennis championship to award equal prize money to women and men. The other Grand Slam tournaments eventually would follow, even though complete equality across all 4 didn't arrive until decades later. King also had a keen understanding of television. Her 1973 Battle of the Sexes match against former men's champion Bobby Riggs was promoted as spectacle, but its meaning was larger than its carnival atmosphere.
It was Billie Jean who fought for equal pay for women in the U.S. Open tennis tournament and got it. All of of the women of America, or at least most of them, seem to be caught up with the anticipation of this match. Billie Jean went into virtual seclusion. There was talk before the match about her health, whether or not she'd even be able to go ahead with the match as scheduled, or the match would have to be postponed. It turned out instead that Billie Jean King was perfectly ready. And not only ready, but willing and able. She played her own game, resting up, being non-communicative, but preparing herself mentally and emotionally and physically for a stunning performance against Bobby Riggs.
King defeated Riggs in straight sets before a massive international audience. Off the court, she founded the Women's Sports Foundation in 1974, which created an organization devoted to access, research, advocacy, and leadership. She continued to push for equal treatment, LGBTQ inclusion, and investment in women's leagues. Her later involvement with the Los Angeles Dodgers, Angel City FC, and the Professional Women's Hockey League demonstrate the continuity of her mission. Women's sports doesn't just need inspirational athletes, it also needs ownership, governance, and capital. King's career provided a model that later athletes repeatedly used: perform brilliantly, understand the business, organize collectively, and refuse to accept gratitude as a substitute for equality. Change in the United States accelerated in 1972 with Title IX of the Education Amendments. The law didn't mention sports by name, but it prohibited sex discrimination in education programs and activities receiving federal financial assistance. Because schools and colleges were central to American athletic development, its effect on sports became enormous. Before Title IX, many schools devoted most facilities, coaching, travel budgets, and scholarships to boys and men. Girls might have had intramural programs or limited schedules, but the pathway from childhood participation to college competition was pretty narrow. Title IX required educational institutions to take equal athletic opportunity seriously, including participation, scholarships, and the treatment of teams. The change was dramatic. Department of Education records note that female participation in organized high school sports increased from about 294,000 in 1971 to more than 2 million in 1978. That expansion created something professional leagues can't exist without, and that's large, continually renewed pipelines of talent. Title IX didn't create the WNBA, professional soccer, or women's hockey, but it did create generations of trained athletes, coaches, administrators, and fans. A girl who received a school uniform became much more likely to imagine herself as a college athlete. A college athlete then gained elite coaching in national competition. Successful programs produced rivalries, television audiences, and alumni who would later buy tickets, coach kids, and invest in teams. For as good as the law has been, it hasn't eliminated inequality. Schools still debate roster numbers, access to facilities, spending, and compliance. Women are still underrepresented in coaching and athletic administration, including within women's programs themselves. Yet Title IX transformed the assumption at the heart of American sport. Athletic opportunity was no longer a privilege granted to girls, it was an educational right. While women built their own competitions, some also entered sports dominated by men. These stories attracted attention because they challenged the belief that gender boundaries in sport were fixed and universal. Toni Stone's baseball career in the Negro Leagues was an early example. Then decades later, French-Canadian goaltender Manon Rhéaume played a period for the Tampa Bay Lightning in a 1992 NHL preseason game, becoming the first woman to appear in an NHL exhibition game. The IIHF identifies that appearance as a landmark in women's hockey history. She also did stints in the IHL and ECHL. In auto racing, Janet Guthrie became the first woman to qualify for both the Indianapolis 500 and Daytona 500. Danica Patrick later won an IndyCar race.
Into turns 3 and 4. Danica Patrick coming out of 4. And boys, move over. The lady is coming through. Danica Patrick wins at Twin Ring Motegi.
Patrick would later lead laps at Indy and secured the pole for the Daytona 500. Their results mattered because motorsport places women and men in the same machines on the same circuits, making exclusion increasingly difficult to defend as a matter of tradition. Golf offered similar tests. Annika Sörenstam competed in the PGA Tour's 2003 Colonial, while Michelle Wie repeatedly entered men's events as a teenager and young professional. Neither experiment needed to prove that every elite woman could beat every elite man. The deeper point was that opportunity could be assessed through qualification and performance rather than automatic exclusion. Then there was women's soccer, which developed through national associations and informal clubs long before FIFA gave it a true global championship. In some countries, the game was actively suppressed. England's Football Association banned women from affiliated grounds in 1921, a restriction that lasted half a century. Similar attitudes elsewhere denied the sport facilities, coaching, and legitimacy. Momentum was impossible to stifle, though, with the growth of national teams and unofficial tournaments. FIFA finally staged its first official Women's World Cup in China in 1991. 12 teams participated, and the United States defeated Norway 2-1 in the final before 63,000 fans. FIFA later described the tournament as a coming-of-age moment for the women's game. The big breakthrough for the Women's World Cup, though, would come in the United States in 1999. Matches were moved into large stadiums, total attendance exceeded 1.19 million, and the final at the Rose Bowl created one of the most defining images in women's sports when Brandi Chastain scored the winning penalty against China.
The USA could win the World Cup on this next kick. Chastain will take it. She missed a penalty kick against China in the Algarve Cup, and they lost that game. Go!
FIFA's historical attendance figures show how dramatically that tournament expanded the scale and ambition of the event. The World Cup gave women's soccer recurring visibility, but professional leagues remained fragile. The United States launched and lost multiple leagues before the National Women's Soccer League began play in 2013. That league has developed some staying power. Europe's traditional clubs also increasingly added women's teams and placed major matches in famous stadiums. England's Women's Super League, Spain's Liga F, France's Premier League, and Germany's Frauen-Bundesliga became central parts of the global game, while clubs such as Barcelona, Chelsea, Arsenal, Lyon, and Wolfsburg built recognizable women's brands. The 2023 Women's World Cup expanded to 32 teams, which demonstrated that the sport's competitive map was widening. Spain won its first title, traditional powers faced stronger challenges, and countries investing in domestic development saw results. The next stage isn't merely larger tournaments, though. It's stable club calendars, better transfer systems, and improved labor standards, stronger lower divisions, and a global market in which players can build long careers without depending entirely on national team income. Women's hockey became an Olympic medal sport at the Games in Nagano in 1998, with the United States winning the first gold medal. The Canada-US rivalry became one of the Winter Games' signature matchups, supplying dramatic finals, recognizable stars, and regular television exposure. Finland, Sweden, Switzerland, Czechia, and other nations have gradually strengthened the field, although the North American powers remain dominant. Club hockey was much more unstable, though. Canadian and American leagues would appear, sometimes merge, but eventually fold. Players often worked additional jobs despite representing their countries at the Olympics. The Canadian Women's Hockey League ceased operations in 2019, which led to the formation of the Professional Women's Hockey Players Association, who refused to settle for another underfunded league. That pressure helped produce the Professional Women's Hockey League, or the PWHL, which began play in January 2024 with teams in Boston, Minnesota, Montreal, New York, Ottawa, and Toronto. The league brought many of the world's best players together under one structure, backed by centralized ownership and a collective bargaining agreement. The response from fans to the PWHL has been strong. The inaugural regular season drew just under 400,000 fans, and a Montreal-Toronto game at Bell Centre in Montreal attracted 21,105 fans, then a world record for a professional women's hockey game. The second season increased total and average attendance, and by the 2025-26 regular season, the league reported more than 1 million fans across 120 games, averaging 9,300 per game. Expansion into new markets has shown that women's professional hockey was moving beyond survival and into long-term growth. The PWHL's importance is larger than just attendance, though. It provides visible careers between Olympic cycles. Young players can follow teams, not only national programs. Rivalries can develop every winter, with players negotiating better workplace standards. Women's hockey has finally begun to possess the year-round professional center that its international success has long deserved. The precursor for success for women on the pitch and ice in terms of professional leagues was found on the hardwood. Now, women's basketball, like the other sports, had strong college and Olympic traditions before gaining a professional league. Earlier organizations struggled, but the commercial success of the undefeated 1996 U.S. Olympic team helped convince the NBA that the time was right. And on April 24, 1996, the NBA's Board of Governors approved the WNBA, and the league began play in June of 1997 with 8 teams. The league's first game was a coastal clash between the New York Liberty and Los Angeles Sparks, but it was Houston who built the league's first dynasty, winning 4 consecutive championships behind Cynthia Cooper, Cheryl Swoops, and Tina Thompson. The next generation of stars included Lisa Leslie, Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, Candace Parker, and Maya Moore. The WNBA has survived through some rocky times with franchise relocations, limited media attention, and persistent comparisons with the NBA, but its players have also become influential public voices on racial justice, voting rights, gender equality, and LGBTQ inclusion. Over time, stronger ownership groups, improved sponsorships, social media, and the popularity of women's college basketball have created a larger commercial base. The league started to see its players like Breanna Stewart and A'ja Wilson become household names, and then came Caitlin Clark.
Caitlin Clark has a 40-point triple-double in the Elite Eight. Remarkable. Absolutely remarkable.
In college at Iowa, Clark's deep shooting, passing, and pursuit of records turned college games into national TV events. The Indiana Fever would select her first overall in the 2024 WNBA draft. Her arrival didn't create interest in women's basketball. Generations of players had already built the league, and established stars were already producing elite competition. But what Clark did do was concentrate attention at an extraordinary level, bringing in new or returning fans into the WNBA's conversation. Fever games would be moved into larger arenas, and games would tip off during better national television windows. Opponents sold tickets because Clark was visiting, but those fans also encountered a league filled with distinct personalities and styles. Clark's impact, therefore, has become a bit of a test. A celebrity can create a surge, but a league grows only when it converts curiosity into lasting attachment. The most valuable Caitlin Clark effect has come through more commercial leverage. Larger audiences have led to better media agreements, higher salaries, and better facilities. Charter travel is now the norm, and the league is expanding. Clark became a symbol of the moment, but the opportunity belongs to the entire league. The WNBA entered its 30th season in 2026 as North America's longest-running women's professional league, a milestone that once seemed far from guaranteed. The growing number of women in professional sports is also visible in jobs in leagues dominated by men. Women are increasingly working in coaching and front office roles, as well as officiating, medicine, and media across the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, the NHL, and major soccer leagues. Becky Hammon became the NBA's first full-time female assistant coach when she joined the San Antonio Spurs in 2014. She later coached the Spurs during a regular season game after head coach Greg Popovich was ejected. Hammon then became a championship-winning head coach with the WNBA's Las Vegas Aces. Her path challenged the notion that a woman could only coach women, but wouldn't gain respect with men. The NFL has also seen women serve on coaching staffs and as football operations executives. Katie Sowers became the first woman and first openly gay coach in a Super Bowl with the San Francisco 49ers in Super Bowl 54. Jennifer King became the first black woman to hold a full-time NFL coaching position. Sarah Thomas was the league's first full-time female official and later became the first woman to officiate a Super Bowl. By the 2020 playoffs, the NFL highlighted 6 women coaching for postseason teams and pointed to that as evidence of a wider pathway for women in the league. Baseball's also experienced a similar change. Kim Ng was the first woman to serve as general manager of a Major League Baseball team when the Miami Marlins hired her in 2020. Alyssa Nakin became MLB's first full-time female coach, and in 2022, the first woman to coach on the field during a Major League regular season game. Women now work throughout player development, athletic training, and front offices, even though top baseball leadership remains overwhelmingly male. In the NHL, women have earned roles as executives, scouts, coaches, and broadcasters. Emily Engel-Natsky broke through as the first woman hired as a full-time member of an NHL coaching staff when the Washington Capitals named her video coordinator. Jessica Campbell increased visibility for women in coaching as the first woman to have a coaching role on the bench with the Seattle Kraken. Women's voices have also become more common on national and regional broadcasts. Catherine Tappan anchored an NHL game broadcast featuring an all-female crew in 2020. Emily Kaplan from ESPN is also one of the most respected reporters in the league. Global soccer has opened up positions a bit more unevenly. Women coach men in youth academies and lower divisions. It wasn't until 2026, though, that a woman would take charge on the touchline for a club in one of Europe's Big Five leagues.
Marie-Louise Eta, and it is official now. Congratulated there by Horst Held, by everyone connected with Union. They are the victors. It's a win for Marie-Louise Eta. And the Union fans who have made the long Sunday night journey will reckon it was worth it.
Marie-Louise Eta took over Union Berlin in the Bundesliga on an interim basis and led the team to a pair of wins, 2 losses, and a draw in 5 games. Women have also found work as sporting directors and executives, as well as officials for major men's matches. Stephanie Frappart gained prominence by refereeing elite men's competitions, including at the World Cup. FIFA's rules require at least one female representative from each confederation on its council, while leadership and mentorship programs seek to expand women's influence off the field. Media may be the most visible area of change. Women now host and provide analysis on studio shows, call games, and work in every facet of broadcasting, both in front of the camera and behind the scenes. The future of women's pro sports will be determined less by whether people are interested and more by how institutions respond to that interest. The old argument that no market exists has repeatedly been debunked. The next questions concern scale, labor, access, and control. Media distribution is critical for growth. Women's leagues need regular, easy-to-find broadcasts rather than scattered games placed wherever schedules allow. Streaming provides global reach, but visibility still requires promotion, production quality, and top-notch storytelling. Investment must be sustainable and move beyond short-term enthusiasm. Teams need dedicated training centers, medical staff, marketing, and youth systems. Players need salaries that allow them to train year-round. There also have to be protections around pregnancy and family planning. These issues will be addressed through stronger collective bargaining positions for players as the popularity of the sports grow. For leagues, expansion creates opportunity, but also risk. New teams can reach underserved markets, increase the number of jobs, and generate rivalries, but expansion that happens too rapidly can dilute talent and place clubs in cities without strong ownership or fan bases. The strongest leagues will grow organically, using attendance, media reach, and community outreach to drive growth. Gender inequality, though, continues to be a challenge. The richest soccer nations and clubs are professionalizing rapidly, while players elsewhere still have to fight for basic pay, safe facilities, and functioning federations. Hockey needs broader competitive depth beyond North America. Basketball's international club ecosystem must become more coordinated so that players aren't forced into exhausting year-round schedules just to get by. The leadership of women in men's leagues will also continue to evolve. The next breakthrough will be having enough women in decision-making roles that their presence there isn't seen as being out of the ordinary. The same is true in ownership and media, where control over money and narrative shapes the business of sports. Women's sports must also be allowed to develop their own cultures and audiences. The audience for the PWHL is different from an NHL crowd and is more than capable of standing on its own merit while breaking free of comparison to male counterparts. The future of women in sports, be it on the field, in the boardroom or press box, and in the stands is bright and will continue to grow with each girl and young woman who sees that they too have a place in the arena. If you've enjoyed this episode, do us a favor and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Now, we're going to be back with a brand new season later on in the fall when we continue to look for more than just a score.